All right, so if you guys remember, about a month ago, we had an American hero, somebody named Daniel Hale, who was a former Air Force intelligence officer, and he basically was sentenced to jail in a similar capacity to the persecutions of Edward Snowden and Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning and every other U.S. whistleblower that has exposed some of the crimes of the empire. And he was sentenced to about 45 months in jail, I think it was, and it's completely unjustified. It's just yet again another example of the United States using this Espionage Act, which is something that's only supposed to be used against like foreign spies, and they're using it to crack down on whistleblowers who are again exposing violent, horrific crimes that the U.S. military has been confirmed to commit. So he doesn't belong behind jail, and in fact, the people who committed the crimes really do belong behind jail. Obama, for example, and his drone program and the devastation that it caused, he should be behind jail, and Daniel Hale deserves a full pardon. And so we have now Representative Ilhan Omar coming out and trying to pressure Biden to do exactly that. So Representative Ilhan Omar calls on Biden to pardon Daniel Hale for drone leak. The legal question of Mr. Hale's guilt is settled, but the moral question remains open, Omar wrote in a letter to the president. So Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar is calling on President Joe Biden to pardon Daniel Hale, a former Air Force intelligence analyst who leaked top secret documents revealing the inner workings and civilian consequences of the U.S. military's drone program. Hale was sentenced to nearly 4 years in prison last month. And in a letter sent to the White House on Thursday, Omar said the information Hale revealed, quote, while politically embarrassing to some, has shown a vital light on the legal and moral problems of the drone program and informed the public debate on an issue that has for too many years remained in the shadows. And noting that she takes, quote, extremely seriously the prohibition on leaked classified information, Omar told the president that several facets of Hale's case merit a full pardon, which would wipe out his conviction, and those include political motivations on the part of the Trump administration, the absence of any harm caused by Hale's disclosure, and the responsibility he took for his actions, which she argued were clearly and firmly rooted in the public interest. Continuing, quote, Mr. Hale served as an intelligence analyst in the Air Force after his service, became one of the most outspoken critics of the drone program in which he had participated, Omar wrote, and in doing so, he joined a proud American tradition of veterans advocating for peace after their service was complete. And so just going back to this, his motivations being clearly and firmly rooted in the public interest. So he was not even allowed in court to make this case. They didn't even allow him to say what the information that I was revealing, while yes, it was classified and damaging to the United States empire and all of these war criminals like Obama who have perpetuated things like the drone program that massacre innocent civilians at a great scale. He was not even allowed to make the case in court that I'm doing this for the public interest. And listen, if anything was going to be considered to be in the public interest, it would be knowing that our president, that our military, our tax dollars are going towards funding a drone program that is massacring innocent civilians. I mean, yes, that's obviously in the public interest to know. If we are going to be able to hold politicians accountable or responsible or base how we are going to participate in this so-called democracy, then these are the types of things that we need to know. It's obviously in the public interest in the exact same way that Julian Assange revealing the war crimes that the U.S. has committed in Afghanistan and Iraq, in the exact same way that is in the public interest, in the exact same way that Edward Snowden revealing information that the NSA was violating Americans' constitutional rights by doing a widespread spying on them, that's also in the American people's best interest to know. So all of these things have been in the public interest, but that doesn't matter because while they are in the public interest, they also, like Ilhan Omar pointed out there, they're embarrassing to a lot of the most elite and powerful people in the country. And so that's why we end up seeing significant consequences for the people who reveal the crimes of the empire, while we see basically no consequences for the people who actually committed the crimes in the empire. So it's this absolutely ridiculous situation, and she's 100% right in saying this. And so they continue here. Prior to his sentence, Hale delivered an 11-page handwritten letter to the court outlining his reasons for his leak, and he described personally witnessing the killing of civilians in drone strikes in Afghanistan and Yemen, and he detailed how, quote, military-aged males killed in such operations are routinely labeled as enemies killed in action unless proven otherwise. So basically, you go in there, you kill anybody that you see that looks like they are roughly the age of somebody who could potentially maybe be a terrorist, and then you kill them and ask questions later. And most of the time, they don't really ask questions later. They just label them as a terrorist by virtue of the fact that we killed them. That's literally what they're doing. It's retroactive declaring them as terrorists. So it's just completely ridiculous and disgusting. And again, this just plays into, we know know the figures and the numbers, the estimates of how many civilians have been killed by these drone programs, but even those are probably significantly undercounting and underestimating the devastation that has actually been represented by this type of reality. And so he continues on here. Hale's motivation, as outlined in his deeply moving letter to the judge in his case, was profoundly moral, Omar said in her letter to the president, quote, "As you frequently say, the United States should not just lead by the example of our power, but by the power of our example," she wrote, quote, "I implore you to read Mr. Hale's letter to the judge in full, and I believe you will agree that he was motivated by the same thing. Acknowledging where we've gone wrong and telling the truth about our shortcomings is not only the right thing to do, but is also an act of profound patriotism." So this is going to be something that's obviously hard for Joe Biden, who was a member of the Obama administration, to come to grips with, right? He was a part of the same drone program that Obama was pushing. He was literally his vice president. So it's obviously going to be hard for Biden to admit that they were wrong in this entire endeavor. And not only that, but then pardon somebody who was, the investigation initially began under the Obama and Biden administration. Granted, they didn't decide to pursue a case against Daniel Hale. That actually ended up happening under the Trump administration. So there is a little bit of room there for Biden to say, yeah, we kind of fucked up on a lot of these things, and maybe this guy who is politically persecuted by the Trump administration should be freed. But listen, are we confident that Biden is going to do this? I don't know. But they continue here, just to give you a perspective on the actual devastation that we caused to these drone programs. Hale's service in the U.S. military coincided with the first term of the Obama administration, a period of unprecedented expansion in remote U.S. killing operations around the world. According to the UK-based Bureau of Investigative Journalism, or TBIJ, Barack Obama oversaw more strikes in his first year than George W. Bush carried out during his entire presidency. And by the time Obama left office, they estimated that between 384 and 807 civilians had been killed in strikes in Pakistan, Somalia, and Yemen. Again, a wide area of estimates here, 384 to 807. That's a massive gap in the window of how many you're estimating that you could have possibly killed. And again, that's probably even an underestimate there. But they continue, with Afghanistan included, they put the estimate of estimated civilian death toll from U.S. drone strikes between 910 to 2,200 individuals, including as many as 454 children from 2004 to 2020. So it's completely ridiculous. And we all know the 90% statistic, right? There was a period of these drone programs, like a 5-month period or a 6-month period, where they were literally killing 90% unintended targets, 90% innocent civilians. So if that's ever the case, okay, it's time to shut down that program. It's a failed program. And so this is the question on the table here. Do we want a country in which whistleblowers who expose the crimes of the empire are prosecuted, or do we want a country in which the war criminals themselves are held responsible and prosecuted? And I don't expect, obviously, Biden to open an investigation into Obama and send him to, The Hague or anything like that. But we need to take the bare minimum steps and stop prosecuting all of these people who are heroes. This guy, Daniel Hale, along with Julian Assange, along with Edward Snowden, along with Chelsea Manning, they're all heroes, okay? This is what it means to hold the most powerful people and institutions responsible, to be willing to put yourself on the front lines of these fights in terms of like freedom of speech or freedom for the American people to understand what our government is doing. This is just accountability 101 within what is supposed to be a free and open and democratic system. These people are absolute heroes, and Ilhan Omar is 100% right, and credit to her for trying to put the pressure on Biden to pardon Daniel Hale.